Hello students, welcome to Understanding the Self subject. In our last discussion, we have discussed the physical self. We talk about the stages of lifespan, the factors affecting physical growth and development, which include nature and nurture. The concept of body image and the concept of beauty were also included in that discussion. For today's topic, we will talk about the sexual self. Actually, this is the longest topic that we are going to discuss on midterm. That is why this topic is divided into two PowerPoint. As we go on to our discussion, we will try to define sex and gender. We will also have a short glimpse of physical development of human and the stage of puberty among adolescents. Kind of sexual orientation, the erogenous zones, and the phases of sexual response is also part of this discussion. So in general, we will try to deal with sexuality from an academic and scientific perspective relevant to understanding who we are so we may better know how to take care and protect ourselves. I don't know if you still remember what I have told you before, wherein I stated that this topic is a little bit sensitive to discuss since it involves sexual aspect. So please, my dear students, be open-minded as we go on with this discussion. Widen your perspectives and your view on the following new concepts or terms you will encounter later on. Okay, so shall we start? Before I introduce the first concept, let us be familiar with our learning outcomes for today's lesson. At the end of the lesson, the students should be able to identify the stages in the unfolding of the sexual self, determine the difference of sex and gender, decipher the consequences of uncontrolled sexuality, and last but not the least, determine the ways to prevent the spread of STDs or sexually transmitted diseases. Okay, so let's talk about sexuality. Our sexuality is part of who we are. Whether we feel comfortable talking about it or not, it is undoubtedly an aspect of ourselves that the earlier we properly learn about it, the better we can understand who we are. So let's define sexuality. Basically, sexuality is defined as the ways people experience and express themselves as sexual beings. However, the WHO or World Health Organization provides a working definition of the term sexuality that encompasses or specifies much more. As you read the definition by WHO, try to digest it sentence per sentence and see how it helps you in better comprehending the term sexuality. So allow me to read the definition. Sexuality, it is a central aspect of being human throughout life, which encompasses sex, gender identities and roles, sexual orientation, eroticism, pleasure, intimacy, and reproduction. It is experienced and expressed in thoughts, fantasies, desires, beliefs, attitudes, values, behaviors, practices, roles, and relationships. So sa madaling sabi, our view about sexuality is heavily affected by a lot of aspects such as education, occupation, economics, law, politics, history, media, society, culture, and of course, religion. And as person recognizes these numerous factors, it influences his or her view about sexuality. And paano ito nangyayari? Of course, as we observe the lives of the people we know. What else? The communities we have seen, or even the way we react or respond to various issues on sexuality. Sa true lang tayo ha, but you know what? In our country, particularly sa kultura ng mga Pinoy, when you ask or admit ignorance on the topic sexuality, it seems that it is considered as taboo or degrading. When we say taboo, something that is avoided or forbidden. Diba kapag ang topic is about sex or about sexuality, sasabihan ka na, ano ba yan? Ang bastos mo naman. Ano ba yan? Ba't ganyan yung mga tanong mo? Okay? And this ignorance or yung kamangmangan or pagiging walang alam, it has to be addressed through proper education. Although, sex education is not yet implemented in our country, but it does not mean that learning cannot take place. Okay? If more Filipinos would continue to learn whether formally or informally about proper sex education, then it may be indirectly passed on to young children through teaching proper hygiene or through discerning a child's actions, questions, or comments about sex. Actually, I don't know if you heard the news before about dun sa isang school na na-feature sa news na nag-offer sila ng free condoms sa school nila para ma-avoid daw yung pagrami ng teenage pregnancy. But you have to remember, sa Philippines, we have the separation of the church and the state, na kung saan hindi pwedeng makialam ang church sa ginagawa ng government. At the same time, hindi pwedeng makialam ang government sa ginagawa ng church. Kaya lang, against yun sa principles ng church, yung pagbibigay ng condoms or para hindi lumago yung population. Kasi nga, ano bang sinasabi ng church? Go forth and multiply. Humayo kayo at magparami. Pero anong sinasabi ng government? Masyado ng marami ang population, kailangan ng bawasan. So, ito yung isa sa kanilang ways para at least ma-prevent yung pagrami ng population, yung pagbubuntis. Okay? So, naging issue talaga ito. Ito yung nakilala natin bilang RH Bill. Pero ngayon, napasa na siya, isa na siyang batas. That's why we have the Reproductive Health Law. Okay? But, you know what? Ang point lang naman dito is that sex education is not to promote sexual intercourse. Hindi naman natin in-encourage or kino-convince ang bawat tao na magkaroon ng sexual intercourse or makipag-sex, right? Diba? Ang goal naman ng sex education is to promote good sexual health and safety from sexual violence. Okay? Kaya kayo, my dear students, kung meron kayong mga pamangkin din at naku-curious sila, diba? Kapag tinatanong nila kung anong part ito or anong part ng body yung sa may middle part ng male or ng female, huwag yun lang sabihin na flower or bird. Okay? Diretsahin nyo na sila. Okay, baby, that is penis, that is vagina. Okay? Kasi later on, mako-confuse ang bata. For instance, kapag nasa school na siya, nag-aaral, and then inintroduce ng teacher yung bird or di kaya yung flower. Okay, class, this is flower, this is bird. And then, sasabihin ng bata or nung pamangkin nyo, oh teacher, that is not bird. According to my tito, according to my tita, this is the bird. Sabay ituturo niya yung private part niya. Okay? Or kaya yung reproductive organ ng male or female. Okay? So, doon is kailangan ma-enlighten na natin sila. We commonly have encountered the terms sex and gender being used interchangeably. For better comprehension, we have to ascertain that these two are not synonymous. When we say sex, it refers to a person's characterization as a female or male at birth, typically based on the appearance of external genitalia or other biological characteristics including chromosomes. Ang tandaan nyo lang, when we say sex, it's the biological and physiological characteristics of males and females, such as reproductive organs. What is the key term here? It's the word biological. Kung may penis, then definitely he is male. Kapag may vagina, then she's female. As simple as that. On the other hand, when we say gender, it refers to social characteristics that may be or not be aligned with a person's sex and adopted by an individual as their gender identity. Ang tandaan nyo naman sa gender, it is socially constructed characteristics of men and women. What is the key term here? It's the word social. Okay, perhaps whenever you fill out any personal information, you notice they ask your sex or if not, your gender. If sex ang itatanong, two options lang yan. It's either male or female. On the other hand, kapag gender ang nakalagay doon, you have several options. You can put either lesbian if you are lesbian, gay if you are gay, bisexual, transgender, and so on. Nagigets natin yung point or nagigets natin yung concept ng sex and gender. Huwag malito sa dalawa ha. Bilis lang naman ma-differentiate itong dalawang ito. Okay? So take a look on these terms. We have gender identity, gender expression, biological sex, and sexual orientation. So let's start with gender identity. When we say gender identity, it is how you think about yourself. It's the chemistry that composes you and how you interpret what that means. Kaya kung mapapansin nyo sa may image, yung identity, yung arrow nakafocus lang dun sa my brain because it is how you think about yourself. Okay, so basically, gender identity is a personal conception of oneself as male or female, or rarely, pwedeng both or neither, wala sa dalawa. For example, if a person considers himself a male and he is most comfortable referring to his personal gender in masculine terms, then his gender identity is male. As you can see at the middle part, there is the word genderqueer. Kaya sila nasa gitna, it's because they are those who do not follow binary gender norms. They are neither, both, or a combination of male and female genders. Okay? Next, we have gender expression. When we say gender expression, it is how you demonstrate your gender through the ways you act, dress, behave, and interact. Okay? Basically, it is how a person publicly expresses or presents his or her gender. Okay? Yun ang term na tandaan nyo. yung kanyang, paano niya i-express yung sarili niya sa ibang tao. And kung titingnan nyo, yung sa gitna, may makikita kayong word na androgynous. What do we mean by that? Sila ay partly male and partly female in appearance. Okay? It's a combination of masculine and feminine characteristics. Kaya sila nasa gitna. Next is biological sex. It refers to the objectively measurable organs, hormones, and chromosomes. For females, of course, they have the vagina, ovaries, and XX chromosomes. And for males naman, they have penis, testes, and XY chromosomes. We also have the term intersex. Ibig sabihin, it's the combination of these two. Actually, may mga pinapanganak talaga na dalawa ang kanilang reproductive organs. Kaya nag-undergo sila ng surgery. Okay? Intersex ang tawag natin sa mga yun. And for the last one, we have sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is who you are physically, spiritually, and emotionally attracted to based on their sex or gender in relation to your own. Okay? So, sexual orientation is about who you are attracted to. Ang key term nyo dito ay yung word na attracted or attraction. Okay, so you have to remember sexual orientation is different with gender identity. Ang gender identity kasi, it is not about who you are attracted to, but about who you are. Okay, ano yung tingin mo sa sarili mo? Okay, and yung sexual orientation kasi, kanino ka na-attract? Okay, next one, we have physical development. The beginning of adolescence is marked by rapid physical changes, including the maturation of the reproductive system and the development of different sexual characteristics. If you can still recall what I have told you in the previous discussion, I stated there that the adolescent stage is the most crucial stage in the development of a person. Kasi nga, sa stage na to, there are a lot of changes that happen on our physical body. And ito yung stage na malapit na tayong pumunta sa adulthood. Okay? So, meron ng transition dito from childhood to adulthood. So, primary sex characteristics, these are physical characteristics that are present at birth. Sa mga babae, these characteristics include the vagina, uterus, and ovaries. On the other hand, sa mga lalaki naman, the primary sex characteristics include the penis, testes, or testicles, scrotum, and prostate gland. Actually, madali lang naman ma-differentiate ang primary and secondary sex characteristics. Kapag primary sexual characteristics, these are related to the sex organs which are present at birth. So, ano na ba yung sex organs nung pinanganak yung isang bata? Kung meron siyang penis, lalaki siya. Kung meron siyang vagina, babae siya. Okay? Next, we have here the secondary sex characteristics. The secondary sexual characteristics develop during the onset of puberty. For women, ang earliest evidences na meron na sila dun sa point ng puberty, unang-una, enlargement of their breasts. Okay? Malaki ng kanilang dibdib. Next one, menstrual cycle. Nagkakaroon na sila ng regla. Nagme-mens na sila. And then, of course, widening of hips. And then, enlargement of their buttocks. And growth of pubic hair. On the other hand, sa mga lalaki naman, ang evidences kapag masabi nating sila ay nandun na sa stage ng puberty, merong testicular growth, okay? And then, nagkakaroon na ng production of sperm, appearance of facial, pubic, and other body hair. Okay, so, nagkakaroon sila ng hair sa mukha or yung facial hair sa may private part nila and body hair. And of course, deepening of voice, yung lumalalim na yung kanilang boses. At the same time, nagkakaroon sila ng Adam's apple. Okay, what is hormone? Hormones are natural substance that is produced in the body that influences the way the body grows or develops. Okay, so what are the examples of hormones? Una, we have testosterone na ito ay sa mga lalaki. And then we have estrogen and progesterone na sa mga babae naman makikita. Anong nangyayari during puberty? Okay, testosterone and other androgens stimulate the development of primary and secondary sex characteristics, and take note, it also increases sex drive. The level of testosterone production is fairly constant. Sa mga babae, ang kanilang ovaries ay nakakapag-produce ng estrogen and progesterone. Take note, estrogen promotes female reproductive capacity and secondary sex characteristics. And you have to take note that the production of female sex hormones follows a cyclical pattern. Approximately 28-day monthly cycle. And usually, nakakapag-produce ng maraming hormones sa mga babae during ovulation period. Okay, this is the part wherein an egg is released from ovaries. So, the two ovaries produce, store, and release egg cells during ovulation. Yung ovulation period sa mga babae usually happens 2 weeks after or 14 days pagkatapos ng kanilang first menstruation. Ladies, anong tawag sa first menstrual period na na-experience nyo which happens 2 years after the start of your puberty? Menarche is the first menstrual cycle of ladies. Ito yung first experience nila ng bleeding or yung pagdurugo. And it usually occurs between the ages of 10 to 16 years old. Okay? What is reproductive system? When we say reproductive system, it is the system of sex organs designed for reproduction or sexual function. Sa mga babae, the reproductive system includes 2 ovaries, the fallopian tubes, uterus, vagina, and clitoris. Sa mga lalaki naman, their reproductive system includes penis, testes, scrotum, prostate gland, seminal vesicles, vas deferens, and epididymis. Any intervention with the normal pattern of sex hormone production in the embryo results in strange abnormalities. So if nagkakaroon ng problem or issue sa pagdevelop ng sex hormone, then definitely with 100% assurance, its results have strange abnormalities or hindi normal. For instance, a genetic male develops the female accessory structures and external genitalia if the embryonic testes fail to produce testosterone. Okay, so let's digest this statement. If the testes of male fail to produce testosterone, malaki ang chance na makapag-develop yung body niya ng female structures and external genitalia. Okay, kaya kung mapapansin nyo, may mga lalaki pero at some point, meron silang features, sa body nila merong features na pang babae. Okay? And on the other hand naman, same goes with female. Okay? Kung na-expose naman ng female sa testosterone, may chance rin na makapag-develop yung body niya ng male structures. Kasi ang sabi dito, if a genetic female is exposed to testosterone, the embryo has ovaries but may develop male accessory ducts, glands, as well as a male reproductive organ and an empty scrotum. Okay, so we have these terms pseudo-hermaphrodites and hermaphrodites. So when we say pseudo-hermaphrodites, these are formed whose individuals having accessory reproductive structures that do not match their gonads. Ano ba yung gonads? The gonads is the primary reproductive organs. For male, the testes. For female, the ovaries. Okay? And then yung hermaphrodites naman, these are individuals who possess both ovarian and testicular tissues, but this condition is rare. So basically, hermaphrodites is the condition of having both male and female reproductive organs. Okay, so meron talagang pinapanganak na dalawa yung kanilang reproductive organ. Meron silang penis, meron din silang vagina. Okay, and this condition is very rare except sa may Southern Africa. Okay, napaka-common sa Southern Africa yung intersex or yung hermaphrodites. Next, we have puberty. Puberty, it is the period of life generally between the ages of 10 to 15 years old when the reproductive organs grow to their adult size, become functional under the influence of rising levels of gonadal hormones. When you hit puberty, ito na yung part na magkakaroon ng transition from childhood to adulthood, and puberty can be a challenging and confusing time. This stage of life involves many physical and psychological changes which results from shifts in hormone levels, and puberty tends to happen in females earlier than in males. After this time, reproductive capability continues until old age in males and menopause in females. When we say menopause, it is the point when a woman no longer has menstrual periods. Hindi na siya nagme-mens. Okay? In males, as they reach the age 13, puberty is characterized by the increase in the size of the reproductive organs, followed by the appearance of hair in the pubic area, axillary, and the face. Okay? Yung axillary, yan yung buhok sa kilikili. Okay? So, nagkakaroon na ng hair sa muka o yung facial hair, sa may armpit or sa may kilikili, underarm, and sa kanilang private part. Okay? How long does it take for males to reach sexual maturation? The reproductive organs continue to grow for 2 years until sexual maturation mark the presence of mature semen in the testes. How about females? In females, the budding of their breasts usually occurring at the age of 11 signals their puberty stage. Okay, so yung pag-enlarge ng kanilang breast at the same time, yung kanilang nipple, okay, yung pag-develop ng kanilang nipple. Yun yung signal na nahit na nila yung stage ng puberty. Okay, so ito yung nasabi ko kanina, yung menarche. It's the first menstrual period of females which happens 2 years after the start of puberty. Alright, moving on to the kinds of sexual orientation. Let's begin with heterosexual. Ano ang ibig sabihin ng heterosexual? People who are heterosexual are romantically and physically attracted to members of the opposite sex. Heterosexuals are sometimes called straight. So kapag sinabi nating heterosexual, it's the attraction of people to their opposite sex. Men who are attracted to women and women who are attracted to men are heterosexual. Okay, Tagalogin ko, yung lalaki may gusto sa babae and yung babae may gusto sa lalaki. Kaya sila tinatawag din na straight. As simple as that. Okay, sila ay heterosexual. Next, we have bisexual. Alam ko familiar na kayo sa term na to at hindi na to bago sa inyo kasi naririnig nyo na itong term na to sa kung saan-saan, especially sa social media. Okay, so people who are bisexual are romantically and physically attracted to members of both sexes. So kapag sinabi nating bisexual, it is a condition when a person finds both men and women attractive. Na-attract siya sa babae at the same time na-attract din siya sa lalaki. And it can be difficult for a bisexual person to come out because their orientation is not clear. Nako-confuse sila, hindi nila alam kung saan ba talaga sila na-attract. Okay? Ano naman ang tawag natin dun sa mga taong hindi na-attract sa kahit sinong tao? We call them as asexual. People who are asexual may not be interested in any sex but they still feel emotionally close to other people. Okay, so asexual is the lack of sexual attraction to others or a low interest in sexual activity. Next, we have pansexual. Sino naman itong mga pansexual? Individuals who can experience sexual, romantic, or emotional attraction to all person regardless of that person's gender, sex, or sexuality. So, ang clue nyo lang dito yung prefix na pan. Kapag sinabi kasi nating pan, all. Okay? So, ito yung mga tao na na-attract sa lahat, regardless kung ano man ang kanilang gender, ano man ang kanilang sex or sexuality. Basta tandaan nyo, na-attract sila sa lahat. Okay? Take note, pansexuality and bisexuality are almost similar but not quite the same. Pansexuality is broader than bisexuality and people who identify as pansexual may be attracted to people of all gender, sex, or sexuality. Ang bisexuality kasi, it is the attraction to two genders but not necessarily all. Okay? Ang literal definition kasi ng bisexual due to the prefix bi, di ba? When we say bi, two. Okay? So, it's a sexual or romantic attraction to two sexes or two genders. Okay? Bi, dalawa. Pan, lahat. How about the polysexual? When you say poly, ibig sabihin many or marami. The sexual attraction to many but not necessarily all genders. Okay? So, magkaiba pa rin sila dun sa pan ha. Sa pan, lahat. Okay? Regardless kung ano ang sex, gender, or sexuality. Sa poly naman, na-attract siya sa marami pero hindi lahat. Okay. And for the last one, we have homosexual. Sino naman yung mga nasa homosexual? Homosexuality is romantic attraction, sexual attraction, or sexual behavior between members of the same sex or gender. Okay, so homosexuality is being attracted to people who are the same sex. Men who are attracted to men and women who are attracted to women. Okay, moving on to the next part of this discussion, the erogenous zone. At tatanong ko sa inyo, what turns people on? Human sexual arousal may be produced by direct stimulation of the body's erogenous zones. Erogenous zones may be classified by the type of sexual response that they generate. Many people are gently aroused when their eyelids, eyebrows, temples, shoulders, hands, arms, and hair are subtly touched. Gently touching or stroking of these zones stimulates a partner during foreplay and increases the arousal level. Okay, so basically, erogenous zones, ito yung part of the body that are receptive and increase sexual arousal when touched in a sexual manner. Okay? Ano bang ibig sabihin ng arousal? Arousal is the state of being sexually excited. When the erogenous zones are touched, there is an expected automatic sensation. However, you have to take note, the quality of the sensation depends on who and how the zones are being touched. So basically, yung mga parts ng body ng male and female na kino-consider as erogenous zone, kapag ito ay tinouch ng inyong sexual partner, ma-arouse kayo. Or kumbaga, ma-excite kayo. Okay? For having a sexual intercourse. Okay, so let's find out on the succeeding slides the erogenous zones of the female and male body. So let's start with the female first. Ayan. So disclaimer, okay, a warning. These photos contain sensitive content which some people may find offensive or disturbing. Anyway, ang discussion naman natin is for academic purpose. So okay lang yan. Okay, kailangan ma-discuss natin ito. Okay, first is clitoris. Clitoris, it is considered as the body part contributing most to sexual arousal. And this is extremely sensitive. So, tandaan nyo, ang clitoris, ito yung body part sa babae na mas nakakapag-contribute sa sexual arousal ng babae. Okay, ang clitoris, makikita natin yan sa may upper portion. Kung nakikita nyo dito sa may picture, yun sa may parang pinakadulo. That is clitoris. And according to research, it shows that stimulating the clitoris is the fastest and easiest way for many women to reach orgasm. Next is the vagina. The interior of the vagina does contain nerve endings, and women reported that deep stimulation leads to a more intense orgasm. Third is the cervix. The cervix is located at the lower end of the uterus. It has its own feel-good nerve pathways. Some researchers suggest that the vagina, clitoris, and cervix all respond separately and distinctly to sexual stimuli. Next is mouth and lips. A recent survey found kissing to be more important in relationship building rather than in sexual arousal. But another study suggests that many women rank the lips and mouth highly erogenous areas. So ito kapag kinalikan or kinis kayo or tinouch kayo sa mouth and lips, ma-arouse kayo. Okay? Ganun lang yun. And the next is the neck. Okay? So neck is very sensitive to light touch, especially among people with low body fat. And another study found that women with spinal cord injury can get pretty turned on with neck stimulation alone. Okay? So kapag kayo ay tinouch sa neck or di kaya hinalikan sa neck, ma-arouse kayo. Okay? And the next is breasts and nipples. So the breasts and nipples play a role in sexual arousal as well. It turns out that nipple stimulation set fireworks off in the same region of the brain that processes sensations from clitoris and vagina. Okay? And just as with the clitoris, pressure and vibration are generally the way to go. Next, breasts and nipples. Breasts and nipples play a role in sexual arousal as well. It turns out that nipple stimulation set fireworks off in the same region of the brain that processes sensations from clitoris and vagina. And the last we have is ears. Ears are super sensitive to the touch, probably due to a large number of nerve endings. Although there is no science yet to say why ears are erogenous, it seems to be fairly common consensus that they are. Okay, so those are the erogenous zones of the female body. Okay, ulitin lang natin. We have the clitoris, the vagina, the cervix, mouth and lips, neck, breasts and nipples, and ears. How about sa male? Ano yung mga erogenous zones sa male body? First, of course, the penis. Okay, while this one is pretty obvious, it's worth noting that both survey and lab-based scientific experiments demonstrate that penile stimulation significantly contributes to sexual satisfaction. And while this can be a sensitive subject, circumcision does not appear to decrease sensation or sexual satisfaction. Okay, ano bang ibig sabihin ng circumcision? When we say circumcision, pagpapatuli. Okay? Ang pagpapatuli kasi, nagsimula yan noong 2300 BC. Okay? And in our culture, Sa Philippines, males are expected to undergo circumcision as a rite of passage to manhood, and not being able to do so can lead to social stigma. Okay? Ang pagpapatuli kasi, beside from being a tradition, if it is done correctly, it has hygiene and medical benefits such as lowering the risk of prostate cancer and of course to prevent yung pag-spread ng STD or yung sexually transmitted diseases. And syempre, kapag na-circumcise or nagpatuli ang lalaki, yung kanilang mga partner o yung mga asawa nila, lower yung chance na magkaroon sila ng HPV or the human papillomavirus, which is considered as the most common sexually transmitted infection na pwedeng mag-lead sa cancers. And in some parts of the world, commonly in Africa, there is a female version of male circumcision. Tinatawag nila itong FGC or FGM, female genital cutting or female genital mutilation. Ang ginagawa rito, may tinatanggal sa kanilang genitalia, particularly yung kanilang clitoris or di kaya yung kanilang labia. However, contrary to male circumcision, yung FGC sa female or yung FGM sa kanila, it has no health benefits. And ang masakit na part dito, it can lead to serious health problems. Okay, next one, we have mouth and lips. Ang mouth and lips, highly sensitive yung mga yan. And male lips respond to light touch, temperature, or pressure. Kissing also triggers a release of hormones involved in intimacy, especially oxytocin. Mas kilala rin ito bilang love hormone, yung oxytocin. Okay? Next is scrotum. The scrotum is one of men's most notable erogenous zones. Lots of nerves mean that this area is super sensitive to touch. Saan ba makikita ang scrotum? Dun sa may egg part. Okay? Sa may pinakababa. Sa may ilalim. Okay, however, there is no research to back up what touch works best. Okay, so it's up to you on how to find out. Okay, next is neck. Okay, so while touching the neck does not appear to be quite as much of a turn-on for men as for women, it's still ranked pretty highly on the erogenous zone list. Okay, so the neck has great sensitivity to vibration, making it a prime spot for light erotic touch. Okay? So, kapag tinouch ang neck or hinalikan, ma-arouse ang lalaki. Okay? Next is nipples. As with women, men rank nipples as a definite hotspot. While male nipples don't appear to serve any real purpose, that does not mean that they are totally useless. They still have plenty of nerve endings. Next is perineum. The perineum is hooked up to perineal nerves which help convey sensations of sexual pleasure from the genitals to the brain. So, ang perineum, makikita yan sa may middle portion, sa may gitna. Okay? Sa baba ng scrotum and then before the anus. And for the last one, same with women, ears din. Okay? Ang ears, highly sensitive to touch because a high number of sensory receptors of the skin. Although some erogenous zones are very common, there is no single map of erogenous zones that every person can endorse. Each body is different, and a person's preferences can change with time, types of stimulation, or partner. People interested in exploring erogenous zones should talk to their partners about what they enjoy, then mutually explore different types of touch. Okay? And for the last part of our discussion, we will talk about the sexual response cycle. So what do we mean by sexual response cycle? The sexual response cycle refers to the sequence of physical and emotional changes that occur as a person becomes sexually aroused and participates in sexually stimulating activities including intercourse and masturbation. So basically, ang sexual response cycle, ito yung cycle or yung stages kapag nagkaroon ng sexual intercourse or nagsasex ang male and female or yung magpartner. Okay? And William Masters and Virginia Johnson used the term sexual response cycle to describe the changes that occur in the body as men and women become sexually aroused. They divided the sexual response cycle into 4 phases. Just a trivia, according to author Thomas Meyer, as part of their clinical research, si William at saka si Virginia, nag-hired sila at the same time binayaran nila yung mga volunteers para mag-engage sa sexual intercourse for their research. Okay, so nag-hire sila ng ibang tao para mag-sex. At the same time, pinag-aralan nila, in-observe nila. But then, dumating sa time na nag-request si William kay Virginia kung pwedeng silang dalawa na lang daw mismo yung magkaroon ng sexual intercourse as part of their own study. Ang magandang part dito, they eventually became lovers. So sila rin yung nagkatuluyan at nagkaanak sila. Okay? So let's start with phase 1. Anong meron sa phase 1? Ang phase 1, it is known as the excitement phase. So basically, this is the beginning of sexual arousal and it can last from 1 minute to several hours. Anong nangyayari sa pulse rate, blood pressure, and breathing? Lahat tumataas, okay? Pulse rate increases, blood pressure rises, breathing quickens, and the skin shows a rosy flush, particularly on the chest and breast area during this phase. So, nagkakaroon daw ng rosy flush sa part ng chest and breast. Anong nangyayari sa nipples? The nipples harden and erect in both men and women. Sa mga lalaki, yung kanilang penis nag-erect na. Okay? And the skin of the scrotum thickens. It begins secreting a lubricating liquid and the testes increase in size. Sa babae naman, the clitoris swell, the lip of the vagina open, and the inside of the vagina moistens in preparation of sexual intercourse. So basically, this is the beginning stage or the preparatory stage ng sexual intercourse. Okay? And self-explanatory naman yung pagkakadescribe dito, maintindihan nyo naman pagka binasa nyo na mismo kung ano yung nangyayari sa different parts ng male and female. Anong mangyayari sa phase 2? Ang phase 2 tinatawag nating plateau phase, okay? Sa phase 2, continuous pa rin ang change sa body natin. What else? Sa phase na to, mas lalo tayong hinihingal. Bumibilis yung heartbeat natin and also our body temperature rises. Okay? Breathing becomes more rapid, heart rate increases, body temperature rises. Blood pressure increases during this stage. In men, the penis become more erect, the circumference of its head increases and releases few drops. So may mga lumalabas ng fluid sa penis ng lalaki. In women naman, the outer part of the vagina swells with increased amount of blood to that area. Merong konting blood. While the clitoris retracts under the clitoral hood knot remains highly sensitive. And the outer lip of the vagina becomes redder in color. Okay, nagiging red na yung outer lip ng vagina ng women. How about sa phase 3? Ang phase 3 naman, it's the orgasm phase. Blood pressure, heart rate, and breathing are at their highest rates with a rapid intake of oxygen. So sa phase na to, extreme na yung blood pressure, yung heartbeat, at saka yung breathing ng magpartner. Okay? And there is a sudden, forceful release of sexual tension. Orgasmic contractions of the muscles happen in the release of the semen which contains the sperm cells. So dito na yung part na merong New Year. Okay, kayo nang bahalang umintindi ko ano ibig ko sabihin sa New Year. Ano mang ginagawa pag New Year, okay? And men usually achieve one intense orgasm. In women, orgasm involves the contraction of the pelvic muscles that surround the vaginal walls and can happen multiple times. In men, rhythmic contractions of the muscles at the base of the penis result in the ejaculation of semen. Okay, so you have to take note, my dear students, mas mabilis makabalik ang orgasm ng babae kaysa sa lalaki. Kaya after ng kanilang sexual intercourse, ang mga lalaki, they need to rest to regain their orgasm. Unlike sa females, multiple ang kanilang orgasm. Kaya pa nilang mag-second round, third round, and so on. By the way, ang orgasm, it usually happens when you reach the height of sexual arousal. Ito yung part ng satisfaction. Okay? And last but not the least, a rush or sex flush may appear over the entire body. So basically, dito na sa stage na to yung climax ng sexual intercourse. Dito na yung phase na nagpapalabas ng sperm cells ang mga lalaki. Okay? And the last phase, we have resolution phase. Okay? Anong nangyayari sa part na to? The body returns to its normal state after orgasm. In men, the erection is lost, the testes decrease in size, and the skin of scrotum thins again. In women, the clitoris, the color of the outer lip of the vagina, and the lips of the vagina return to its normal state. Some women are capable of a rapid return to the orgasm phase with further sexual stimulation and may experience multiple orgasms. Ito ni sinabi ko kanina, na multiple ang kanilang orgasms. Pwede pa sila mag round 2, round 3, round 4, and so on. Men typically need recovery time after orgasm called a refractory period during which they cannot reach orgasm again. Sabi nga natin kanina, isa lang ang orgasm ng lalaki. Okay, kailangan nila ng recovery time, kailangan nila mag-rest, at tawag natin doon refractory period. Okay? So basically, in this phase or stage, everything is going back to normal. So that ends the first part of our lecture, Sexual Self. So wait for the recorded discussion of part 2. I hope you have learned new something today. Thank you so much for joining our today's session. Again, this is Sir Marvin telling you that you should never stop learning because life never stops teaching. Have a great day ahead. Thank you so much and see you next time. Goodbye everyone.